One of the ways we can describe that sense of emptiness we often feel is through the term depression. Depression represents an inner void, an emptiness that takes root in the meaning of our life. When we are depressed, we lose our perception of the meaning of what we experience, what we do, and what surrounds us. However, there is an infallible technique taught to us by the saints to deal with these inner darknesses. It's about developing a deep sense of irony towards ourselves. Evil, in fact, tends to make us take everything too seriously, and this is precisely what pushes us towards frustration and discomfort. It is not always possible to avoid the storms of life, but we must find the courage to go through them. Imagine a pilot of an airplane facing turbulence. If he braked the plane, it would end up crashing. Conversely, a good pilot navigates through turbulence and maintains control of the plane, despite the air pockets. Likewise, in life, we must learn to go inside ourselves and shine a light on our most embarrassing and darkest areas. This means starting to know our interiority and understand the stratification that life has created within us. A fundamental step in this journey is knowing how to distinguish between emotions and feelings. This is the first great division we must make within ourselves through discernment. Before continuing, however, we invite you to like the video, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for your free help. Let's continue. Emotions and feelings are two completely different things. Emotion, as the Latin term suggests, is a movement, something that drives us internally and that arises from the immediate impact with reality. For example, we can be thrilled by a stunning mountain range, feeling awe and wonder, or we can feel revulsion when meeting someone we don't like. Emotions are strong, but they are short-lived. Emotions in themselves are neither good nor bad, they are neutral. We do not choose them, but they arise spontaneously from our encounter with reality. However, we often confuse emotions with feelings. Feelings, unlike emotions, have a more stable duration. Even when the object that provoked the emotion is no longer there, feelings can remain, influencing our lives in a deeper and more lasting way. A classic example of how emotions and feelings can diverge is when, in a moment of frustration, we might experience a strong negative emotion, such as the extreme desire to be violent with someone dear to us. However, this intense emotion does not affect the deep feeling of love and affection that we feel towards him. The feeling is in fact more stable and long-lasting, since it is based on a constant interpretation of reality, which is maintained over time. Feeling develops when we cling to an interpretation of reality that endures, such as love for a person, which persists even when that person contradicts us, disappoints us, or is not physically present. This ability to distinguish between emotions and feelings is fundamental to spiritual sanity. Understanding this difference helps us recognize God's will in our lives, as it allows us to intercept the deep thought that guides our actions. Managing feelings does not simply mean repressing them, perhaps with the use of psychotropic drugs. These medications may temporarily relieve persistent anxiety, but they do not address the root of the problem. To truly address a feeling of anguish, you need to ask yourself what thought is generating it. Let's ask ourselves, what is the real cause that fuels the negative feeling? When we ask ourselves this question, we discover that our life is often guided by fundamental thoughts and interpretations, which can come from three main sources: God, evil, or our personal history. Christian discernment consists in understanding where these thoughts come from. If we recognize that a thought comes from evil, we must oppose it, as St. Ignatius teaches. If we know that it comes from God, we must follow it. If instead it is the fruit of our history, we must take it into consideration without becoming obsessed. To make a true discernment, it is not enough to practice relaxation techniques or meditation. The decisive means for discernment is prayer with faith. Not a mechanical or self-centered prayer, but a prayer of listening and silence. Learning to pray means developing a deep capacity for listening, observation, and perception of the spiritual reality that surrounds us. Prayer allows us to grasp what the Holy Spirit is doing within us. It is not a matter of speaking to the Spirit, but of recognizing His action in our lives. It is not a matter of speaking to the Spirit, but of recognizing His action in our lives. To pray ultimately is to listen and to perceive. It is to enter into a deep silence where we can truly encounter God and understand His will for us. Prayer is not a performance, nor an occasion to display profound meditations, striking phrases, or elaborate formulas. On the contrary, authentic prayer is a process of awareness, a discovery of what is happening inside us. It is the moment when we learn to discern, to understand if what we feel comes from good, bad, or from the wounds of our past. This process of discernment is never simple because everything within us seems mixed up. Distinguishing between good and evil is not easy, as evil often comes in disguise, masquerading as good. Discernment requires deep understanding, an ability to unmask evil even when it disguises itself as something good. Not all evil comes from the devil. Some of it is rooted in our past experiences and needs healing. Evil that comes directly from the evil one requires deliverance, but evil that comes from our wounds requires a healing process. This can happen through dialogue and sharing, moments in which we talk about our suffering and find comfort. Sometimes, talking is the first step towards healing. Discernment is understanding whether a thought comes from God, from evil, or from our personal history. Jesus teaches us to recognize a tree by its fruits. The fruits are not simply the tangible results, but the inner quality they generate. Peace, joy, kindness, gentleness are signs of good fruit, while sadness, anguish, guilt, and division indicate bad fruit. However, life is complex. There are times when, even though we seem to have everything, we feel dissatisfied, sad, anguished. Paradoxically, this anguish can be a gift from God, an alarm bell that pushes us to reflect on what we are really experiencing and whether what we have truly makes us happy. When sadness strikes us in these moments, it can be an opportunity for an examination of conscience, to understand if we are living according to the true good. Finally, it is important to remember that when God speaks to us through sadness, He does not do so to humiliate us. Even if we suffer, that suffering increases our desire to live, guides us towards a more authentic and meaningful life. When depression sets in, the desire for death often increases and one closes oneself off. It is important to recognize that this sadness does not come from God. It is not a sadness that pushes us towards good or that generates joy. On the contrary, there is a sadness that, although painful, helps us to examine our conscience, to return to desiring life and wanting to change. It is that sadness that makes us say, "I don't want to be like this anymore. I want to be free. I want to be better." But there is another sadness, one that immobilizes us, that nails us to a desire for death. This does not come from God. A significant example comes from the parable of the prodigal son, when the younger son reflects on his condition and wishes to return home. This is a positive discernment which leads to conversion. On the contrary, Judas, on the night of the Passion, lets himself be overwhelmed by sadness and chooses suicide. The same sadness can lead to two opposite outcomes: conversion or despair. It is important to understand that when something makes us feel more alive and gives us the desire to live, it comes from God. But if it makes us feel stuck and pushes us towards thoughts of death and destruction, it does not come from God. We must resist these sensations even when they contain a truth. The devil may say true things, but he distorts them with wrong interpretations. Therefore, it is essential to be vigilant over our thoughts, distinguishing between those that bring life and those that lead to spiritual death. Discernment is not about discovering a predefined answer, as if our life were already written in a book. Rather, it helps us to build the response, to make free choices before God, with the awareness that our freedom is not solitude. God is always present, ready to guide us in making decisions that matter. Praying, therefore, means deciding because Christian life is made of continuous choices guided by the presence of God. We are called to become artisans of our spiritual lives, to create masterpieces with what we have, even when resources seem scarce. Discernment is the ability to bring together contradictory elements and draw meaningful decisions from them. We must face the chaos of our lives and discover hidden opportunities within it. In conclusion, turning on the light within us can reveal unexpected ways out, transforming chaos into a great opportunity. If this message has touched you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and to like the video, so as to always stay updated on the next contents. Thank you for your attention. God bless you.